Look at the Unit 1 review for this test. So this first one, we're asked to find the inverse of f of x. So I'm going to write down that f of x. So we know that f of x equals 5x minus 4. And by definition, this inverse, we switch our x and y. X equals 5y minus 4. And now we have to solve for y. So we can add 4. X plus 4 equals 5y. And we can divide by 5. And you have to divide everything by 5. So we have our inverse of f equals x, oops, that got a little messy there, sorry about that, equals x plus 4 over 5. Now the second problem here, we have to show a composite, and we're showing that it equals this. So this means we just need to show our work. So we start with g, which is 1 over 5x. We circle that x, and we're going to replace it with our inverse. And our inverse we found in the previous problem. So 5x plus 4 over 5. If we notice 5 over 5 reduces down to 1, so we're left with 1 over x plus 4. And that's all this problem is asking us to do to show us that it's equal to 1 over x plus 4. Now the second problem here, there's quite a few that go with, oops, I forgot to renumber that one. So number 1 here, and obviously I need to work on my alphabet here. That first question, it is saying to find the y-intercept. Well, we know the y-intercept is of the form 0 and our y value, so we can plug in 0 for x. So 1 over 0 plus 4, so our y-intercept is equal to 1/4. We'll sketch a graph. Some of you might recognize that our parent function is 1 over x, and plus 4 moves it to the left 4. But if you weren't sure about that, we could easily just grab our calculator and graph this. 1 over x plus 4. So we can see if it's our parent function, but it's moved to the left 4, that 1 over x. So we can sketch it, 1, 2, 3, 4. And there we have our graph. And you can see from here, we said our y-intercept was 1/4, which we can see on there as well. So the next one, this one shouldn't be there. It's supposed to just say find the inverse. So we switch our x and y. X equals 1 over y plus 4. And then we have to get the y out of the denominator, so we'll multiply by y plus 4. So now we have xy plus 4x equals 1. And now we have to solve for y. So we'll subtract the 4x. And we have xy equals 1 minus 4x. And then we divide by x. So now we have y equals 1 minus 4x over x. So now we have to find the x-intercept of this graph. So our x-intercept is x comma 0. So let's see, if we plug in 0 for our y value, we get 0 equals 1 minus 4x over x. Multiply by x, so 0 equals 1 minus 4x. Subtract the 1. Sorry, this is getting a little messy. Negative 1 equals negative 4x. Divide by negative 4, and we get x equals 1/4. Now that looks familiar, and some of you might be saying that, well, that kind of makes sense here. If we go back to problem number 1, we know the coordinate 0, 1/4 is on this graph. So we know for our inverse, if 0, 1/4 is on that one, this one must be 1/4 and 0. What are the asymptotes here? Well, we can either graph it as well, or we can look at our original graph. So for h of x, our originals were, it was at x equals negative 4 and y equals 0. So the ones for our inverse here have to be at y equals -4 and x equals 0 because our x and y switch places. But again, we could always graph that and we could take a look at it and we could see that as well. So we have our inverse equation was 1 minus 4x over x, and we can see it's at x equals 0 and y equals -4. Now this last one, given h, the inverse of h of a is 5, find the value of a. So we have our inverse equation here, and we're given our y value. So we could say, here was our inverse. We know y is 5 equals 1 minus 4x over x, and we could solve this, multiply by x. So 5x equals 1 minus 4x plus 4x plus 4x. So we have 9x equals 1. So x equals 1/9. The other thing we can say as well, if this is the coordinate, if it is a and some 5 on our inverse, then that means on our normal one it must be 5 and a. So we have 1 over 5 plus 4, which is 1/9. So let's see what's left on this bottom of this page here. So the first thing we're asked to do is find the inverse. So we're going to switch our x and y. X equals 4y plus 1. Solve for y, subtract our 1. X minus 1 equals 4y. Divide by 4. So we have our inverse equals x minus 1 over 4. Now the next one we have that composition, so we're going to start with our f. 4x plus 1. We'll circle that x, we'll replace it with our g, so 4 times 2x squared plus 2 plus 1. But we're not leaving it as x with an x, we have to replace our x with a -1. So 4, 2 times -1 squared plus 2 plus 1. Well, -1 squared is 1, times 2 is 2, plus 2 is 4, times 4 is 16, plus 1, we end up with 17. So that's the first page, and we'll come back and take a look at the second page.